Welcome to month 6 of the Cheshire Quilters Guild 2017 block of the month. What you're going to need for this month's block is to print out the flower petals templates. We're doing the flower petals block. And make sure that this shaded square turns out to be 1-inch square. And the way in which you're going to do that is just take any ruler and lay it on top, and you should be able to fill that a 1-inch by 1-inch square on your ruler with the gray, with no white showing and no gray outside. If you have printed it accurately, which means that when you printed it from a Adobe reader, that you have Adobe Acrobat reader, that you have selected print to size and have it at 100%. Then you should get this perfect 1-inch square. If you've done that, then the size of your templates, whether you're making the smaller 3-inch block or the larger 9-inch block, should be the correct size. So do that and then join me back here and I'll show you how I use the templates to cut out the fabric. For the video, I'm going to demonstrate doing the larger version. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my rotary cutter and roughly cut the templates out just a little bit past the narrower cut line. So I just want to have it something a little more manageable than having the whole sheet of paper. So there's my petal template, and then I'm going to do the same thing and just cut roughly a little larger, cut out the background template. Now some of you may be cringing because I'm using my regular fabric blade to cut the paper, but we should be changing our blades fairly regularly anyways, so the fact that I use it occasionally for paper isn't that crucial. Okay, here I have a double layer of fabric, and I'm going to cut my a pair of petals out of it. You're going to need two different fabrics. Now, and it doesn't matter if your fabrics are right side together or wrong side together or whatever, because your piece is symmetrical. So whether you cut them on right sides or wrong sides of the fabric makes no difference whatsoever. Now, as I've shown you before, I'll take my template and I'll just put a couple of little dots of glue on it. And once I've done that, I will press this template down with my fingers just to kind of put it in place. And now I'm ready to cut it out. Now, the only requirements for the glue, you'll see this is Blix. The brand doesn't matter. The key thing that matters is that somewhere on there it says that it's washable. And this happens to be washable and acid free, but you want that washable, so it could be Elmer's, it could be a fabric glue stick you got at the quilt store. It doesn't matter, as long as it's washable. That's the key thing, because we don't want to have something that's permanently in our fabric. Now I'm going to take my ruler, and again, I've said this before, I like the Creative Gids because it's got that very clearly marked 1/4 inch along the side, and I'm going to line up along, not the cut line, but I'm going to line my 1/4 inch on the ruler up with the sew line, with that seam line, and then I'm going to start my cutting, and I'm going to slowly rotate my ruler and work my way around, continually ensuring, I'm just trying to turn this so I can give you a better view, continually ensuring that I'm maintaining that 1/4 inch, and I'm just trimming like 1/4 of an inch at a time as I go along, not very far. And then I'm going to rotate the ruler, cut the next section, and so forth along this line. So let me finish this side. Notice that I'm taking quite a while to do this because I want to make sure, and I just backed up to make sure I trimmed it cleanly. I want to make sure that I get a nice even 1/4 inch seam all along the edge of this petal. Oops. And you notice I'm kind of hampered. I have one finger that decided to get a little too close to a rotary blade the other night when I was cutting some strips. So I was going along nice and was working rather quickly because I was just cutting strips of a particular size, and my finger decided to get a little closer to, well, it didn't get close to the edge, it got over the edge of my ruler, and so I kind of trimmed my finger a little short. Nothing too major, no need for stitches or anything, but it is a little sore, so I'm trying to keep it out of the way. So there is, oops, okay, I need to go back and fix this spot right here. I didn't press down hard enough with the, you're going to tell me it's because I need to change my blade, which very well may be the case. And there. So there's half of it, and now I'm going to just rotate it around and do the same thing on the other half. And I'm also going to cut out another pair of petals from a different fabric. And I'll meet you back here after I've got that done, and then we'll look at how I'm going to cut out the background templates. Okay, so here I have my two pairs of 2 petals each. So now I want to cut my background. And let's just look at the picture for just a moment. Notice that we need 4 pieces of background for each of the colors, because we need 2 background pieces for each petal, and since we have 2 petals same color, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 petals of each. I just want to make sure that's clear. I'm going to show you how to cut 2, but then you're going to need to go ahead and cut 6 more, 2 more of that same color, and then 4 of another color. So here's my fabric I'm going to use, and I'm going to cut 4. And just because I want to kind of minimize the use of my 10-inch square here, I'm going to fold it diagonally. These again are also symmetrical, just like our petals are. So I'm going to put this up in the corner, so then I can just cut the straight edge along the sides, and those will be straight a grain. And then this inside curve will be a bias cut, but that'll minimize cutting into my fabric, so I'll have the most fabric left that I possibly can. Now, as before, we're going to take our glue stick, and I'm going to put a little piece there. I'm going to put a little bit on the 2 wings of this template. And then I'm going to set this pretty close to the corner. I don't need to, I'm just going to pretty much just trim off the the zigzag edge on the 2 sides. Make sure my piece is lined up good so I have fabric on all the sides. And then I can cut the 2 easy cuts. And the 2 easy cuts I can do with any square ruler. I can bring it over, and again, another Creative Grids ruler, so it's got the 1/4 inch on the 2 sides. So I can lay that right on top of that corner on the template and wiggle it around until I get those 1/4 inch lines right on top of my seam lines on the template, and when I get it where I think it's perfect, or as close as we can get in quilting world, then I'm going to zip along the two straight edges. Make sure I cut all the way out to the edge. So I'm past the, oops, didn't quite get it on this side. I'm past the ends of the template in both directions. Perfect. Now I can, because I've got that template glued in place, I can pick up my ruler, turn it around, and now put it down so that I'm trimming the two little square ends. Now this is a 5-inch piece because we're doing a 4.5-inch finished unit, so it'll be 5-inch unfinished. So I can just lay my ruler on there, and I've got nice square edges, and I can just go like that, trim that end, and trim that end. And you say, well, wonderful, you've left the hardest thing to last. Well, I've gotten the straight cuts out of the way because now I know there's where my curved piece is, and guess how we're going to trim that? The same way we trimmed the other pieces. We're going to line up the ruler on the stitching line and start our curve cut. I keep closing my ruler by mistake. Let me move it around here where you get a little slightly better view. I line my ruler up and start cutting around that curve, and just as before, you're going to do slowly and carefully, lining up your ruler on that seam line, the 1/4 inch on your ruler with that seam line on the template, and just work your way very carefully around that curved part. And believe it or not, I think this is almost the hardest part of doing curved piecing, is making sure you've cut your curves out correctly. So go along, taking it slow and easy. You know, I've got the advantage of a rotating mat. If you don't have a rotating mat, do it on the corner of a table where you can kind of walk around the piece that you're trimming. Okay, let's bring a little hand-eye coordination issue here. And you see, I'm cutting along quite nicely. But if you do this on the corner of a table, you can still get around the curve without too much trouble as far as not getting into an awkward position. Just move your body around rather than rotating the fabric and the template. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. Okay, I've gotten that far. And again, just take it slow and easy. Just cut a little segment at a time, and you'll see it comes out relatively smooth along this side. And this is the piece that's going to be on top. Actually, let me come back. Look at that. I've got all that extra paper hanging out there. So I didn't do a very good job right there. So you don't want to. It's okay if you've got a little extra, you can go back and trim it off. Whatever you want to do is you don't want to trim in and get your piece too small. Too small is never a good thing. Okay, we're almost there. And let's get that dust out of the way. And there you see there's one. I had it doubled over, so I've got 2 of my pieces I need from this color fabric. I need to repeat this and get 2 more of the same fabric, and then cut 4 from another fabric. So let me do that, and I'll let you go and do yours, and then we'll come back here and look at how we're going to actually piece these together. Okay, here's all my pieces cut out, and I just kind of laid them out in the shape of the block. So just for your reference, I would consider this print here my fabric 2, this my fabric 5, my fabric 4, and my fabric 6. So fabrics 2 and 6 are my backgrounds, and fabrics 4 and 5 are my petals. Now, when you look at the instructions for sewing these, what I tell you to do, and let's just get 3 of the petals things out of the way, is you're going to take each of your petals and fold them in half right sides together. And the reason we're doing this is we want to find where the center of the edges of your template are, of your petal are. So I'm just finger pressing this. You can use your iron if you want to, but I'm just trying to find the center of those 2 sides. Okay, and you could see I've got little crease marks on the center. Now we're going to do the same thing with the background templates, but for these, instead, you're going to do them on wrong sides together. And scrunch, crunch, scrunch. There I've got my little crease on the wrong side. So when I layer these right sides to right sides, see the creases will fit into each other, and that'll help us match up those center marks. So it's the petal right sides together and the background wrong sides together. Now once you have that with the petal on the bottom, we're going to set our background template and again line up those 2 creases, and I'm going to put a pin in right there through those centers, because we want to make sure that comes out correct. Now we can take this over to our sewing machine and start stitching. Now in the instructions I only have you put that 1 pin in. When we get to this point, and I failed to put this in the instructions, but when we get to this point, we're going to take that pin and we're going to move it down to the end. So we're going to start stitching up at this end. We're going to stitch along till we get to the middle, then we'll take that pin out, move it to this end, and then we can finish stitching the seam. So meet me over at my sewing machine and I'll show you how this works. Here we are at the sewing machine. There's our pin in the center of our seam, and we're going to come over here to the beginning of the seam, and we're going to take the end of the background template and we're going to line it up square with the end of the petal template, the petal piece. We want to make sure we got these edges on this side lined up, and they should also line up on that side. This is where a stiletto, your purple thing, the back of a seam rip or something of that sort will be very helpful in keeping those pieces lined up the way they want. So let me get mine situated here. I've got my finger, I put my purple thing down, I slide it up under my presser foot, lower my presser foot down, and I need to make sure I've got it lined up on my presser foot where I need it to be to sew an accurate 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to take a couple of stitches. So I've secured the beginning, and now I'm going to just sew, and this is I believe true about all curved things, whether you're cutting or you're piecing. Just take it slow and keep the edge of the background fabric lined up with the edge of the petal fabric as we slowly work our way around. And I'm keeping my 1/4 inch on the outside of where I need to on my presser foot for my accurate 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to stitch along. You'll see there's some little bubbles in the background fabric on the top, that's fine, as long as it's nice and smooth underneath your presser foot where you're actually doing the seam. And so let's just keep going here. I'm using my purple thing in this case, but you know, you could just as easily use the back of a seam ripper. Don't poke through the fabric, just lay the edge down as your extra finger that you don't get stitched, that can go up into the mouth of your presser foot, and just work your way all the way around till you get to the center where your pin is located. And we're going to stitch right up to, we're going slow so we can stitch right up to the pin, and then I'm gonna pull my pin out, and I'm gonna rotate the whole unit. And if you'd like, what we want to do is we want to line up the end of the seam the same way we lined up the beginning. So if you want, you can actually take your pin you just pulled out, and you could put it in at the end, and then we can just pull it out again when we get there. The key is you want to have those lined up the rest of the way, and so a pin is a good way to do that. So let's continue on. Use your tool, whatever of choice, to keep the edges of the fabric lined up as you continue to stitch your 1/4 inch seam all the way to the end. This takes patience. Now, once you get used to sewing curved seams, you can actually sew them very fast without any pins. And some people think the faster you go as you're stitching, the more likely it is you can do it kind of freestyle and have it come out correctly. But especially if this is your first attempt at stitching a curved seam, the method I'm describing here of going slowly and checking your fabric as you go along is the best method for beginning success. You get confident, you do whatever you want. For beginning success, I recommend you following my instructions, and I'm going to pull my pin out because I'm here at the end. Okay, so let me cut my thread, and let's see what we have here. Well, we've got a nice 1/4 inch seam, and if I fold the background template to the outside, looks like a nice curve we've got there. So what we need to do now is take this over and press it, and then sew on the other side. So let's go press this. Okay, so here we are over at our pressing area, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of roll back the background fabric and try to just make sure I've got a nice clear, I don't have any crinkles or anything on the front of this. And then we just take our iron and just roll it back. Don't try to stretch anything. We just want to use the edge of the iron to roll it back. And what you'll see happens on the back, we've got extra fabric underneath here, but with just ironing, or pressing rather, so that the petal template, or the petal piece, lays flat, it makes for a nice smooth seam on the front. And I'm not using any steam. I rarely use steam when I press. To get steam, what I would use is spray a little best press or starch or whatever, or even just water, and use that spray as the moisture for steam rather than actually using steam from the iron. Okay, so we've got one side stitched on, and now we're going to do the same thing we did before. We've pressed it, so we've lost our crease for the center, but we can do the same thing we did before. Line up the ends of the petal, put a little crease in it if you want to. You can even hit it with your iron to get a nice crease in there. And then we want to do the same thing with our background piece. that was right sides together. This was right sides together, so we're going to do wrong sides together on the background piece. Line up those ends and get a nice little press for your crease there. These creases are going to line up, and what are we going to do? We're going to pin that. Go to our machine and stitch again. And then it's, you know, like the shampoo bottle says, you know, lather, rinse, repeat. We're going to just do the same thing to sew all 8 of the background fabric pieces onto our petal pieces. So let me go do that, and we'll come back here. Well, I'm going to sew this one on, and then I'll come back and we'll show you the pressing for the other side, just to have that, and then I'll do all the other ones of my blocks. Okay, so I've put the second side on using the same technique. I'm finger pressing it back just to make sure I don't have any tucks or anything in that seam. And then I'm just going to hit the edge. I'm just kind of rolling it back. I'm not really even setting the iron down. I'm just trying to make sure with the edge of the iron that that seam is pressed back. And there you have, from the back side, you see we've got that nice flat petal, and then on the front side we've got the nice flat seams on either side of our petal. So there's one unit made. We need to make 3 more, and then we can put our block together like any 4-patch. So I'll meet you back here when I have my other 3 finished, and we'll look at how my block comes together. So here you have it, block 6 from the Cheshire Quilters Guild 2017 block of the month. Our flower petals. I've got my seams pressed and furled on the back. So we'll see you back here next month for block 7, which is Basic New York Beauty, and we'll do some more curved piecing and also some foundation paper piecing.